It's time to accelerate. Hi, I'm your host, Andy Paul. Join me as I host conversations with the leading experts in sales, marketing, sales automation, sales process, leadership, management, training, coaching, any resource that I believe to help you accelerate the growth of your sales, your business, and most importantly, you. Hello, and welcome to Accelerate. I am excited to talk with my guest today. Joining me is Ian Altman. He's the founder and CEO of Grow My Revenue, a best-selling author of 2 books, Same Side Selling, a radical approach to break through sales barriers, and Upside Down Selling, an integrity-based sales approach to avoid being predictable. Ian's also a sought-after keynote speaker, an expert in sales leadership and business growth, and articles featured regularly in Inc. and Forbes. Ian, welcome to Accelerate.
Andy, thanks for having me here.
Gosh, when I do introductions to people like you, I feel so inadequate.
Well, trust me, you're far from inadequate. I often listen to the intro and go, "Man, who is that?" And then I'm surprised at the end if it's me.
It's you. It's Ian. Oh, wait, yeah. Am I supposed to talk now?
What a surprise! Wow, no one's more surprised than me.
Well, so fill out the holes in that introduction for the audience.
Well, so I started my first company in 1993. It's funny, actually, the way I started my first business, I had been working for this mainframe-based company. And I saw this huge opportunity in these PC-based solutions. And I kept going to the company saying, look, we should pursue these. And they said, no, because we're a mainframe company. We don't want to deal with that stuff that a few $100s a pop. It's just there's no money in that. Which, of course, we all look back now and laugh. And the guy
were you working for DEC? Is that who you're working for?
No, but that would be funny, right?
Yeah.
So it wasn't DEC. It was a public company, however, and the guy I worked for at the time, this guy, Bob says to me, well, so what are the opportunities? And I lay them all out on this whiteboard in my office. I said, look at that. There's easily $500,000 in revenue over the next year we can get. And Bob says, well, what do you need in order to pursue those? I said, just permission. I mean, I can sell it. I can actually do the work. It's just no one will let me do it. Bob says, so then why don't you do it? I said, no, because management won't let me do it. Bob goes, no, I'm not saying here. I'm saying if the company has no desire to do this and you've asked and there's a need in the market, you're a single guy, you don't own a house, you don't even have a dog, go do it.
What's the downside, right?
So 1993, I started my first company. We became a Fast 50 company by 1998. I think it was about 1996. I hired Bob to be my COO. I called him up and I said, hey, Bob, listen, I got a job for you. He said, what's that? I said, managing me. And he said, oh, I don't know if I'm up for that again. And so we became a Fast 50 company by 98. We then built a software company and grew that. And by 2005, a group of investment bankers approached us and said, look, you got this blue chip client base. They acquired my company for cash and stock. I served as managing director of the parent company, and we grew the value of that business from $100 million to about $2 billion, a little over 3 years. And then I decided I was totally burned out, and I didn't need to do that anymore. And I did absolutely nothing. I realized quickly that I enjoyed growing companies more than I enjoyed running them. Mm-hmm. And that's what I get the pleasure to do now, is just help other people with strategies and how to grow their business with integrity.
Right. So let me ask you some basic sales questions before we jump into something a little more in depth. So what's the single most important piece of advice you'd give to a salesperson today?
The single most important piece of advice is you have to have a complete understanding of what problems you solve for your client and why they would buy from you and why they wouldn't.
Okay.
And the reason why is because I've done a lot of research into how executives make and approve decisions. Mm-hmm. And too often we think like marketing people and think features and benefits. But in the research I've done, what we find is that the first question someone asks when approving a decision is, what problems does this solve and why do we need it? And if you don't know the answer to that question, then you're relying on your client figuring it out, which rarely happens. And
which
this
is
way,
sort of the common MO for many salespeople.
Exactly. So most people come in and say, "Well, I got this great thing," and they're relying on the customer figuring out why they need it. And instead, if you start from the perspective of what problems do I solve and why do people need it, then it opens up a whole other angle of discovery. And that way, you show up as someone who's there to solve, not someone who's there to sell. Okay.
So a flip side question of that then is, what's the one behavior salespeople should master that would make the biggest difference?
The one behavior really comes down to qualifying. And when I say qualifying, what I mean is it's the behavior that positions you as somebody who's curious, seeking for your customer to convince you they have a problem worth solving. So it's kind of a loaded answer, and I appreciate that it is. But what it comes down to is that what most people do is they walk in thinking, okay, how do I convince the customer to buy my stuff? And instead, the skill that you need to develop is to walk into a meeting saying, this person probably isn't a fit for me. Unless they can convince me otherwise, unless they can convince me they have a problem we're good at solving, unless they can convince me that problem is worth solving for them, there's no reason for me to even present a solution.
Yeah, so this sort of fits into this model you use. I guess you call it your same site elevator pitch.
Sure.
Which I really like the approach. So you have three components of this. And this is for initial connection with potential prospect, and you break it down into entice, disarm, and discover. So let's walk through that, because I think the three pieces of people really should pay attention, take notes on this part, because this is really a great way to open up a conversation. So let's start with entice.
Yeah, in fact, you don't even need to take notes on the rest of it. Just this part. Ignore everything else. It's all the rest is all just useless. No, so Andy, so there's two things. So just to be clear, so entice, disarm, discover, when you're reaching out to somebody, is perfect. Before I get to that, let me just tell you that one of the mistakes I see salespeople make is when they get an inbound request. So someone calls up and says, "Oh, I talked to Andy. He said I have to talk to you." Most salespeople then jump into their pitch and say, "Oh, let me tell you how great we are.
Let me tell you where we were founded."
Yeah. What they need to do is stop when the person calls in and you get an inbound lead. It's a simple question, which is, wow, what inspired you to contact us today? And let them talk about their situation. You don't have to guess. Now, a lot of your opportunities aren't going to be inbound. They're going to be outbound. And so the outbound, the notion is that idea of entice, disarm, and discover. Now, the reason why entice, disarm, discover is important, and I'll go through the steps of it, is that our clients are used to having other salespeople lie to them, and they've probably lied to them for a long time. So when we come across as someone who sounds and looks like a stereotypical salesperson, our clients have been trained to shut down and not be honest with us.
So when you say lie, though, I mean, you're talking about stretching the truth about what they can do. I mean, what do you?
Well, stretching the truth is a nice way to say it, but most of the times it's outright lying. So, for example, someone will say, "Oh, I'm not selling anything. I'm just doing a survey," right? So, my response to that often is, "Oh, that's a shame, because I was hoping to make an impulse purchase, but if you're not selling anything, I guess we won't get there."
Yeah, wait.
No, I am selling something. In that case, you've started our interaction with a lie, so I don't trust you. I can hang up now. I mean, it's just, these are all different little scenarios. But so the idea is that they've often been either misled, or it's just there's enough information, like, when you walk into a store and the salesperson says, "May I help you?" We've been trained to believe that actually what the salesperson's saying is, "Oh, good afternoon. Is there something I can sell you?" Because they're not really trying to help me. They're looking out for their own interest. And so that's kind of the scenario. So if we know that, if we know that people have this preconceived list of bad adjectives about salespeople, we need to figure out a way to not show up like a salesperson early on in the process. And so the idea of entice, disarm, discover follows this sequence. So the idea is,
just to clarify though too, is with entice, is, to your point, is you not show up like a salesperson, but you're not hiding the fact you're selling.
I'm not, but actually what I'm doing is I'm enticing by sharing problems that we solve with dramatic results.
Right.
So the formula is I entice by sharing problems that we solve with dramatic results. I then disarm by acknowledging that not everyone's the right fit for us. And then I trigger a discovery phase to learn more about their situation. Now, this is going to fly in the face of what a lot of sales professionals have been taught, because they're taught, well, no, first you start with discovery. So you ask the client questions like, "Hey, what keeps you up at night?"
One of the worst questions ever.
Right? So, "Hey, what keeps you up at night?" And your prospect says, "Oh, my dog licks himself." Like, now what do you got? Right? You got a solution for that? No. So you got nothing. And the reality is that instead, if you said, "You know what, I'm going to pick the 2 or 3 things that are most likely to really resonate with the person I'm speaking with, and I entice with those," then it would be a matter of, for example, my business, it might be something like, look, organizations typically selling business to business come to me when either they've got a great message that falls on deaf ears, they've got clients who, despite the value that their company provides, their clients tend to focus on price versus value, or they have sales forecasts that if they were in the library, it'd be filed under fiction rather than nonfiction because they're just totally made up. Right. So that would be kind of the entice part, right? For the right organizations, they tell us that we deliver amazing value to reverse that trend so their clients are truly buying on value versus price, and their forecasts are accurate, and they really earn their customers' attention with their message. And now here comes the disarm. But the way we approach that isn't the right fit for everybody. So I don't yet know whether or not would be a good fit for you. But if solving that is important, and here comes the discoverer, then I'm happy to learn more about your situation to see if we can help. And that way, I'm framing the context of the conversation in the 2 or 3 areas that we're good at solving. I'm disarming the notion that we're just there to sell something by acknowledging that not everyone's a good fit. And then I trigger a discovery phase to learn more about their situation to see if we can help.
And the disarm, especially if you say it correctly, as you did, it is very authentic. I mean, people might think, okay, that's kind of a that's sort of a technique we're using, but it is actually authentic because you're not a fit for everybody, and you have to be, like I said, authentic and sincere when you talk about it.
Exactly. I mean, it's I often in my keynotes I use a clip from Dumb and Dumber, that it's a horrible movie with Jim Carrey that still has some.
You can call it horrible, but it's
horrible,
funny. You know it's funny, right?
Oh, exactly. Right. It's horrible and funny. I love it, and with my 15-year-old son, it's like a great movie because it's all bathroom humor.
Right.
And so he's talking to this woman, and he says, "Well, so what are my chances?" And she says, "Not good." And he says, "Like 1 out of 100?" She says, "Nah, more like 1 out of 1,000,000. And there's this long pause, and he goes, "So you're telling me there's a chance?" Right? And it's the same thing. Sometimes salespeople think every opportunity is good. And when salespeople come to me and say, "Man, I deal with a lot of rejection. How do you handle that?" What I say to them is, "Look, you're looking at it the wrong way. You're going at it as everybody I talk to is a potential client. And what I want you to think about instead is not everybody's a good fit for me. And less than half the people I meet are actually a good fit for what I do. So my job early on is to figure out which opportunities are a good fit and worth my time and which ones aren't. So it's not a matter of me getting rejected. Wow, the prospect and I just discovered that we don't have a good fit right now. Okay. Wow, I saved myself a bunch of time. Now I can talk to the next people and maybe I can help them."
Right. Yeah, that's as I said, it's a different. People are sort of hesitant to sort of go that way to say, acknowledge the prospect may not be a fit, and and as you said, it puts that sort of takes the traditional confrontation out of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of the same side selling book is about these adversarial traps that happen between buyer and seller. I co-wrote it with a guy who spent 2 decades in purchasing and procurement, Jack Quarles. And so Jack and I mean, his last name Quarles. Of course, you should know he's a procurement guy.
Procurement guy, right?
And you would think that we would see the world very differently, but in reality, we see things from very similar perspective, which is on the procurement side, he's trying to find somebody he can partner with who's focused on results for them, rather than someone just trying to sell stuff. And the notion of entice, disarm, discover sets it up so that we're just trying to see if we can help. Our primary objective is not to sell something. Our primary objective is to see if there's a fit where we can deliver results.
So interesting. When you wrote that book, Same Side Selling with Jack, as a salesperson, what were the 2 key takeaways you came away with having worked with him for that period of time?
Well, the first thing was that a lot of us in sales believe that the purchasing and procurement person, that their single number one most important thing that they focus on is price. And if you ask most salespeople and you say, well, what's the biggest fear that procurement has? They say, oh, they're going to overpay for something. It's actually not true. Jack said, look, sure, they want to make sure they're getting the best value, but their biggest fear is that they guide the company to spend money on something that doesn't work.
Right.
Because that's how procurement people lose their job, is they buy something that doesn't work, that not only whether they got a good deal or a bad deal, if they don't get the results, it was a bad deal.
Right.
The second misconception was this. I said, Jack, listen, I know how you procurement people work. And half the time you put something out to bid, you guys already have a preferred vendor. So most of us would say, yeah, it's totally true. I know how that works. And Jack says it's not true. He said 100% of the time they have a preferred vendor. And if you don't know who it is, it's not you. Right. And so the idea is that at any given point along the way, the client has a preferred vendor.
Absolutely.
And if you don't recognize and appreciate that, you're at a supreme disadvantage.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. That is, I just gave a talk on that, as a matter of fact. I have a presentation I give about how do you win the sale before you win the order, which is about just that. How do you become the preferred vendor before they make their decision?
Yeah.
So if you're coming into that situation, you're a sales rep, you're coming in talking to procurement. How do you find out whether you're the preferred vendor?
Well, so it's a simple thing. It's, part of it is initially you start asking them questions like, so how are we going to measure the results of this? How are we going to know if this is successful 6 months down the road? And when procurement says, well, what's your price going to be? Say, look, my guess is no matter what we deliver, if we don't achieve your results, it's probably not a good deal, right? I go, yeah, okay. So how would we measure success and what would make it successful? And they'll tell you that. And you say, okay, what would stand in the way of that? It may have nothing to do with us. And then now you're having a discussion where you sound and look more like a buyer than a seller, because you're looking for risks, and that gives you more of a comfort level. One of the other things you can do is, from a competitive standpoint, you could say to them, look, I realize you guys are going through a bidding process, and we're always real big on, if for some reason we don't feel we can deliver, or if we're beyond capacity, we'll tell you that. And that's not the case yet, but depending on when you guys make a decision, that may be the case. Mm-hmm. We always like to get a sense of maybe we're not doing that other people are that we should be doing. Can you tell me some of the things you like about the vendor you'd be leaning towards if we weren't in the mix? So it disarms initially, because if I just said, tell me about the vendor you'd be leaning towards if we weren't there, then it's like, well, why do they want to know that? Right? And they're going to get a little resistant. If instead I say, well, look, I want to get a sense of what other people are doing that maybe we're not, that would be important. Can you tell me some of the things you like about the vendor you'd be leaning towards if we weren't in the mix?
And these are questions that are not, just so people listening understand, it's not that you ask solely to a procurement person. I mean, these are questions you ask your prospect.
Exactly. And so we ask that question, and and when they say, oh, well, I like that they do this, and they do this, and they do that. Okay, great. What else? And you just get an exhaustive list. And then you say, well, so if there were one or two things you could change about them, what would those be? And what you're in essence getting is a roadmap that says, here are their priorities, and here's what they feel the current leading vendor has or doesn't have. Now, by the way, if they say, oh, I don't know, I don't know who it would be if you guys weren't in the mix, then you're probably it. But the idea is you're trying to get that information so that now you can compare, and you do a little self-assessment that says, okay, so here are the things they like. How do we match up against that? Here are the things they wish they could change. How do we match up? If we're not well aligned, we say, look, based on what you told me, I don't know that we're the best fit. And that might make people really nervous. But if they're not the best fit, you want to know that early on.
Oh, absolutely. So, and one of the things that sort of follows along with that is procurement, at least my experience has been, is that procurement really has, especially if you're in a bid situation, they have no incentive to tell you you're out of the game proactively. No, in fact, they want to tell you, oh, yeah, you're in it towards the end. And what most people say is, I say, well, why'd you lose the deal? And they say, oh, well, our pricing wasn't good. And here's one of the other things I learned from Jack. Jack says, look, so let's say we've gone through a bidding process and we picked vendor A. Do you think we call up vendor B and say, hey, by the way, the reason we didn't pick you is we think you suck? No, they call them up and they say, "Oh man, it was really tough. Just you guys just weren't competitive. 1%, yeah, you guys, it's just it's just the other people came in. It was a better value, and we translate better value to the other guys were less expensive. And the reality is that their decision probably has nothing to do with price, but they felt they were going to get a better return per invested dollar with someone else than with you. Now, the reason they tell you, oh, the other guys had a better proposal, their pricing was better, was because the next time they come to you
for a proposal, they're hoping that you sharpen your pencil and cut your own margins and start competing against yourself.
Right. That's
what they're looking for. So they have every incentive in the world to be a little bit misleading. And I say a little bit in quotes. They have every incentive in the world to not necessarily be transparent, because what they want to know is, hey, look, if these other guys don't work out, can we still come back to them? Yeah, probably. All right. Well, let's try and set that up so that way we're well positioned if we ever need these guys in the future.
Right.
And procurement people want options or alternatives.
Sure. Well, this creates the environment that I always talk about, which sort of laughingly is that, especially driven by CRM systems, is you get to the proposal stage. That means we've got a 75% probability of winning this deal, and there's 5 other vendors that are bidding on the same deal. Not everybody has a 75% chance of winning.
It's the new math.
That's the new math, right?
You carry the one, it all works out.
It all works out in the end, yeah. So, sort of following the same trend on same-site selling, is you had an article in Inc. about avoiding outdated sales methods that kill your business.
Yep.
What are these outdated sales models?
Well, a lot of it is the overinflated expectation, hey, we're the best. We have a great solution. Our solution is perfect for you. By the way, what did you need again? So it's like, we're the best. I mean, we've got a presidential candidate.
Yeah, I was going to say right? that came to mind. This is huge. This is great.
Yeah,
it's going to be the greatest.
I'm the best. I'm the biggest. I'm the greatest. Right. And by the way, we have another candidate. It's like, I'm honest. Trust me. Right. I mean, it's kind of funny. I mean, I could write an article every day just about this stuff, but I steer clear of it because it's just like. I have a strong opinion about the fact that with 360 million people in this country, this is what it's come down
to. These two, right?
Right? That's a whole nother issue.
Right.
I think if you and I ran right now, would have a shot.
Land of opportunity.
Exactly. But so part of it is that the other one is this notion of constantly pushing for the sale and asking questions that have to do with the decision rather than the results. So, for example, the age-old car salesperson of what's it going to take for me to get you in this car today is very pushy, that triggers an adversarial response. As opposed to, if you've done your job well and the client sees you have a good solution, you say, what would you like to do next? And they say, well, can I buy it? I just bought a vehicle, and I when I look at it, I close myself.
Yeah, me too. I just did a couple months ago.
Yeah, they said, well, so what do you think? I said, well, so how do we order it? How long is it going to take to get in? Well, it'll take about a month. Okay. Do I order it here or from home? No, right here. Okay. Right. It's like, and people said, well, did you negotiate? I'm like, well, I don't think that was really an option. I think Elon Musk made sure that's not really on the table.
Yeah, for a Tesla, right?
Yeah. So it's like, that's just not going to happen. Okay. Well, and So the biggest things come down to that pushiness and, wow, I've got the solution, and the notion that everyone's a fit for me. They just don't know it yet. And no was just a delayed yes. And all those, the old ABC, always be closing. It's just, it's fun for a movie, but it's not realistic. Go watch Glenn Ross and then forget everything you learned.
But we have whole segments of the sales business that are still increasingly sort of segmenting themselves into, I need hunters, I need closers. This is the words they use in their, aggressive, outgoing, extrovert that they need in their, their job descriptions when they do job postings.
Yeah, and I would argue that there are 3 personas in sales. So there is the order taker, there's a salesperson, and there's a subject matter expert. And I've written about this as well in my column. The order taker is the person where someone calls up and says, I need 3 of these, 2 of those, how much is the price, and when's it going to arrive? The salesperson is the person who believes their job is to sell the customer stuff whether they need it or not. And the subject matter expert is the person the client would actually be willing to pay to meet with because of their expertise. Now, the bad news for the order taker is that there's this little company called Amazon is pretty much replacing all those people. Mm-hmm. Because they can do the order taker thing way better than most of us. We moved my dad to an assisted living facility, and we were getting a big screen TV for his place. And one of my brothers says, oh, we got to find a store and this and that. And we're driving out to his new place. And I said, no, we don't. I pull up Amazon Prime Now. This is in Los Angeles here. I pull up Amazon Prime Now find the TV, click on order.
Deliver tomorrow.
Right. No. Forget about deliver tomorrow. This is Amazon Prime Now. So it's like real time. They deliver, I think it's like the standard delivery is within 2 hours or within 4 hours, something like that. So literally we're driving out, we stop for lunch, we get to his place, we get him into his unit, and the phone rings, and here's the delivery guy. He's got the TV, right? And delivered it right to where we were. Took it out of the box. He's like, "You want me to take the box?" "Yeah, please." Right? And that was it. Like, done. Now, if you're an order taker, that's a pretty tough thing to be competing against. Like, anywhere it can be delivered same day. Like, I don't know how you're beating that unless you've got the kind of infrastructure that they do. So the salesperson, it doesn't matter whether you think you're the salesperson or the subject matter expert. What you have to ask yourself is, if you are a customer, who do you want to deal with? And the answer is the subject matter expert. So what I believe
almost all the time.
Yeah, what I believe over time is that the real value is going to be subject matter experts who understand a sales process and understand an approach to help the customer reach a buying decision, as opposed to your stereotypical salespeople.
Well, I agree. Yeah, I wrote about that in my first book. Yeah, I call it selling with the sharp end of the stick. Put your subject matter experts closest to the customer.
Yeah. Because those are the people that the customer is actually going to trust anyhow.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, there's a Gartner survey. I think it was Gartner. I could be misquoting, but the source. But I mean, basically the notion was that the finding was that 80% of CEOs found no value in meeting with sales reps. But subject matter experts, it was 80% they found value in.
Yeah. Well, it's 80, they don't want to meet with 80% of the sales reps. They also don't want to meet with the other 20% of them.
Yeah. So things, you got to be value, as you talked about. The customer's got to be willing to pay to meet with you, and I think that becomes the ultimate goal. That as if you're a sales rep, you're in sales, and I write about this as if you're sick, do you go see a generalist or a specialist? If you got a heart condition, do you go see your internist or do you go see your cardiologist?
Exactly. Like, no one says, "Oh man, Andy, I got the best generalist. This guy is like mediocre at 35 different things. Dude, you got to meet with him." It doesn't happen.
Well, I wrote a post about, which got some interesting feedback about the one question your customer will never ask you. And which was, the customer is never going to pick up the phone and say, "Ian, I really like your rep over here, but he's just not salesy enough. Could you send over somebody who's more salesy?"
Exactly. See, this person just doesn't quite have enough hype. What else you got?
You're right. So we come to the last segment of the show where I've got some standard questions I ask all my guests. Now, the first one is a hypothetical scenario in which you, Ian, have just been hired as VP of sales by a company whose sales have stalled out. And the CEO and the board are anxious to get things back on track. And I know sales turnaround doesn't happen in a day, but your first week on the job, what 2 steps could you take that would have the biggest impact?
First 2 steps. One would be that notion of defining clearly the problems we solve in our customers' words, so that all of our messaging is centered around what problems we solve for our customers, because then we can describe it in a way that is going to matter to them and quickly identify the right opportunities. And the second piece would be to implement the appropriate tools so that our team is properly skilled at qualifying those opportunities, that we minimize the time we waste on bad pursuits.
Got it. Great answer. Love it. Very concise too. All right, some rapid fire questions.
Sure.
You give me one word answers.
That one wasn't rapid fire? Damn.
Well, that was good, but these are even more rapid fire. You can give me one word answers. You can elaborate as much as you wish. So the first one is, when you, Ian, are out selling your services, what's your most powerful sales attribute?
You know what? Just disarming and honesty. It's just, it's my first thought is always, I don't know if I'm the right fit for this opportunity. And that leads to very open and honest conversations.
Now, you've written a book, and I'm going to digress for a second, about integrity in selling.
Yep.
So how do you define
2 words rarely found together?
Exactly. So how are you defining integrity in selling?
What I mean is that if I truly don't feel that I'm the best person to help solve the specific issue for that client, it's my job to tell them that. Even if I needed the business, even if I wanted the business, doesn't matter. If I'm not the right fit, It's my job to tell them. And it means that your client's interest goes ahead of your own, which may sound counterintuitive, but once your client sees you doing that, it's remarkable. I often tell the story where I was speaking at an event, and so I tell people, look, I deal with businesses that are not commodity driven, where they've got a certain level of differentiation. And so this guy comes up and says, yeah, we're in brick manufacturing. I said, well, that's great. We want you to come speak to our company. And I said, well, it's kind of a commodity item. I don't think I'm the best person to help. And the CEO says, I see what you're doing there. No, how do we get you to come out? And I said, okay, no, actually, I don't think you should spend money with me because I'm probably not going to help you as much as someone who focuses on commodities. And it took like 20 minutes for him to realize that, no, I wasn't going to show up. Like they weren't going to hire me.
You weren't negotiating on price. I could help them.
Exactly. It was just kind of funny. And literally the guy says, well, what if we paid extra for you to learn about our industry? I'm like, no, I'm not the right person for you. Find somebody else.
Yeah. Good example. All right. Next question. Who's your sales role model?
My sales role model. That's a good question. I don't know that I necessarily have a sales role model. I almost look at my sales role model as a good physician who is truly looking out for the patient's best interest and doesn't have anything to sell. So my best role model is, Dr. Patel, my internist, who was never trying to sell me anything, but is just trying to look out for my health and welfare.
I love it. Okay. So besides your own books, plural, what's one book you'd recommend every salesperson should read?
Oh man, there's a lot of them. There are a lot of great books out there. I think in terms of customer experience, Jay Baer's latest book, Hug Your Haters, is a great one, talking about the customer experience side. I think that when it comes to how do you present in front of your customers, Michael Port's latest book, Steal the Show, is another great one. I mean, there are a lot of great books out there on sales and selling, and certainly neither you nor I have cornered the market on great sales books.
No. Yeah. How many new ones come out every day?
You know what? A lot.
Yeah.
It's funny when Jack and I read Same Side Selling. Jack had a book in the purchasing and procurement section on Amazon, and so it was like a number one bestseller for 3 months straight, called How Smart Companies Save Money. I said, man, that's awesome. You must have sold a ton of books. And Jack said, actually, in the 3 months, I've sold fewer books than we sold in the first hour in the sales category. And obviously our book was number one, but it was like, it didn't sit there for 3 months in number one. It was there for a few weeks, but not for a few months. And his was there for months because the category is so small in comparison to the sales category.
Yeah. All right, last question for you. This is a tough one. So what music's on your playlist these days?
What music is on my playlist? You know what? I'm embarrassed to say that there isn't a lot of music on my playlist. There's a lot more podcasts on my playlist. I still listen to old podcasts from Seth Godin. Still listen to stuff that Jay Baer and his team put out. Marcus Sheridan. I mean, I tend to listen to a lot of that. And then it's kind of funny because if I'm at the gym, it all depends on the kind of workout I'm looking for. There could be Van Halen playing, or there could be, there could be Billy Joel. It just depends on how intense I want the workout to be.
All right. Good answers. I love it. So, well, Ian, thanks for joining me today. So how can people find out more about you?
Well, the easiest way is at ianaltman.com, which is my website. Obviously, as you know, my podcast also, the Grow My Revenue Business Cast. And I'm always looking for people to throw out different topics or guests that like to have me on. But ianaltman.com or Ian Altman on Twitter. And people are always amazed. In fact, just before we got on, someone had sent me an email saying, well, I know I'm sure you're very busy, but I have this question. I live for that stuff. So
me too.
I personally respond to them all, and people may think I'm crazy, and someday maybe I won't be able to do that. But for now, I can still pretty much respond to them all.
Excellent. Well, again, thanks for being on the show. And remember, friends, make it a part of your day every day to deliberately learn something new to help you accelerate your success. And one easy way to do that is to make this podcast a part of your daily routine, whether you listen to commute, in the gym, or make it part of your morning sales meeting. That way you won't miss any of my conversations with top business experts like my guest today, Ian Altman, who shared his expertise about how to accelerate the growth of your business. Thanks for joining me. Until next time, this is Andy Paul. Good selling, everyone. Thanks for listening to the show. If you like what you heard and want to make sure you don't miss any upcoming episodes, please subscribe to this podcast on iTunes or Stitcher.com. For more information about today's guest, visit my website at andypaul.com.